Undoubtedly, Micheal and Angela have never had a good relationship, but lately, things have only gotten worse. Micheal attempted to remain calm for months in the hopes that things would calm down if he did, but Angela's energy was simply too much, and her rage was becoming more difficult to control. It was obvious that something had to give, and things quickly got out of control. At last, Micheal, who had been suppressing his annoyance, lost it and did something that stunned everybody. He made the decision to sue Angela. For what seemed like forever, Micheal had been experiencing tension in his relationship with Angela. He had to constantly be on guard because of Angela's mood swings and was never sure what small thing would trigger her next. He could not shake the feeling that nothing he did was ever good enough, and every day felt like tiptoeing through a minefield of thoughts. Whether it was a misplaced call, a misinterpreted text, or something as insignificant as that, Angela always managed to inflate it into a major altercation. Micheal was completely exhausted after this. For months, he was tired of being accused and experiencing emotional highs and lows. He persisted in believing that things would improve and that Angela would eventually calm down. However, things grew worse the longer he stayed. The emotional strain was intolerable, and the fights increased in frequency. Angela's rage would not subside no matter how hard Micheal tried to cool things down, and in the quiet moments that followed the mayhem, when the screaming eventually stopped, he would consider his options. He had committed so much of himself to this relationship already, but it was starting to feel too much emotionally. Thus, after enduring this draining circumstance for months, he found himself seated in his attorney's office. He felt the weight of everything he had gone through as he clenched his hands. He was tired of remaining silent, so even though it wasn't an easy decision, he knew he had to take action. When it became obvious that Angela would not change, I gave up trying to make things right. It dawned on him as he sat across from his attorney that he would be taking Angela to court. Micheal was finally prepared to defend himself, and Angela had to accept the consequences of her actions. It was time to say enough. Like any other night, Micheal's changed drastically that night. After a long day, he went home expecting to find some peace, but he could feel the tension as soon as he walked in. Angela was clearly upset about something she saw online and was in one of her moods again. She usually got worked up over drama on social media, but this time she seemed especially tense. Micheal tried to remain composed and work things out, but he had learned to be cautious in these kinds of circumstances. Angela accused him of cheating as soon as he walked in. There was no evidence, but it didn't matter. She made unfounded accusations about where he had been and who he had been with, and her insults cut deep. Already exhausted, Micheal attempted to soothe her as he had so many times in the past, but Angela would not listen. She suddenly threw a cup of hot tea at him as her voice grew louder and her accusations more severe. His skin burned as the liquid struck his chest, causing blisters. Angela continued. Even after Micheal was frozen, she spat in his face before he could even register what had happened, and her words were replete with contempt. For Micheal, the most painful thing was not the burn itself, but rather the emotional betrayal. Despite their numerous arguments, he had always supported Angela, but this was the final straw. The realization that the person he once loved could treat him so poorly outweighed the sting of the hot tea. That evening, Micheal realized beyond all doubt that his efforts would not lead to a better outcome. He thus went to the hospital the following day to receive burn treatment. He could not deny the feeling that this was his breaking point. While he waited for the doctor, he had to stop living this way. The emotional scars would eventually heal, but the physical ones would not go away. His mother had always been the voice of reason, and although she had previously advised him to exercise patience, at that very moment her words resounded in his mind: "You must leave her." At last, Micheal understood she was correct. That hospital stay marked a turning point in his life. He was losing the ability to rationalize continuing in a relationship that was destroying him. Although the burns on his chest served as a tangible reminder of what he had endured, the emotional burden was far greater. Micheal realized as he sat there that he had to take back his own life and defend himself. At that point, he made the decision to sue Angela. Micheal realized that it was time to act. Michael's attorney went through the case in detail as they discussed the specifics. Not only was the most recent incident at the center of this lawsuit, but it also included years of emotional abuse, public humiliation, and all of the incidents that led up to it, such as Angela's accusations of infidelity, her nasty outings, and her embarrassing moments on television. After years of remaining silent, Micheal wasn't just suing over one night, he was finally advocating for himself. A part of him hesitated, even though he knew this was the right thing to do. Their relationship had been scrutinized by the media for a long time. Every altercation, cosmetic procedure, and dramatic moment had been enacted in public view. Despite his reluctance, Michael knew he had no choice but to file this lawsuit because he needed to protect himself more than anything else. Now, that would mean airing all their dirty laundry again. Deep emotional scars later, it was time to reveal the truth to the world. Everything was covered by the lawsuit, including the recent incident in which Angela spat in his face and threw hot tea at him, as well as her emotional abuse, manipulation, and constant threats. He was reassured by his attorney that their case was compelling. Witnesses attested to Angela's insane behavior, and Michael had medical records to support the physical attack. Though difficult, the move was long overdue. Now, we all knew that Angela would be upset about the lawsuit. She was furious. Rather than contacting her attorney, she posted a number of videos and statements on social media accusing Michael of lying and saying he was making everything up. She accused him of attempting to damage her reputation, refuted every accusation, and portrayed herself as the victim. As the details of the lawsuit emerged, people began to doubt her version of events, despite the fact that her online tirades gained momentum this time. Everything had been spelled out in detail by Michael's legal team. This was no longer just a case of he said, she said, she said. People were beginning to see through Angela as the evidence against her mounted. Michael experienced a tremendous weight lift as soon as he entered the courtroom. This was the time he would finally tell his story, out of the constant accusations from Angela and the media circus. Though he was anxious, he knew that the only way to proceed was to speak up. He talked candidly about everything that had happened to him as he stood. His evidence was composed, measured, and emotional, reflecting the emotional toll that years of manipulation, public humiliation, and physical abuse had taken on him. Angela sat there trying to defend herself as Michael gave his side of the story, but this time her loud, explosive style wasn't enough. Medical records attested to the burns caused by the hot tea, and Michael could cite witnesses to support his allegations regarding Angela's actions. Her attempt to disrupt the hearing with her remark backfired, making her appear even more untrustworthy to the court. After hearing Michael's statements, the judge concluded that although the case was not yet over, Michael had made his point. After pausing for a moment, the judge announced the verdict. Michael had suffered a great deal of emotional and physical abuse. This was more than your average marital argument. This involved years of severe mistreatment of one individual. Michael was granted the legal relief he had been hoping for when the judge decided in his favor, acknowledging all that he had gone through. Following the release of this information, fans also began to voice their thoughts online. Someone said, "Well done, Michael, she is receiving what she is due," according to another comment. Now that I've said that, it's time to wrap up this video, but what are your thoughts? Was Michael correct to bring Angela before the court? Post your ideas in the comments section.